The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster my, good afternoon, welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. We're open line today through till 1 o'clock. So, well, nice to see another Hurtigruten vessel in today, and I just wonder what your thoughts are regarding the hospitality industry, who are, it's fair to say, well, using terms like a call to arms. A meeting of the hospitality sector has been described as one of the biggest of its kind on the Isle of Man, and a statement from the LVA released after the private meeting said the aim was to discuss the challenges faced by the hospitality industry. LVA, the Licensed Victuallers Association. They say these include pressures from wage increases, recruitment issues, regulatory and training burdens, and reduced footfall. Additionally, they've called for an overhaul of VAT. Presumably, that's not for VAT to go up. It's the other way. If you're in the hospitality industry, I'd like to hear what you have to say. And really, is it for the government to sort this out? Big problems with recruitment on the Isle of Man. Of course, we're in a kind of a negative unemployment situation. The finance industry, certainly the e-gaming industry, will hoover up as many people really that want to work. So working in hospitality is not everybody's cup of tea. Lots of people love working in hospitality, but a lot of people don't. They don't like the having to deal with the public on a daily basis. It's almost a fact of life with some people. So what can the government do about this? What is it you think needs to happen? Because I'll come back to the cruise liner. They will be hoping to maybe pop somewhere today. Go into a restaurant, into a cafe, into a pub, perhaps. And the trouble is, we're losing stuff. Last week it was announced that the T-Junction on Castle Street in Douglas is not negotiating another lease when it comes to the end of their lease next year. A lot of work involved in hospitality. For the people who own hospitality venues, it really is not a job, it's a way of life. Roy B says on 505, why do the licensed victuallers use such warlike terminology, a call to arms? This kind of language turns off public sympathy. Millions of pounds must go out of the Isle of Man economy due to online shopping. The government should look at scrapping or reducing Isle of Man VAT and charge a sales tax like they do in Jersey on goods. Is it time to get rid of VAT? Well, the government does get a lot of money from VAT. An enormous amount of revenue comes in. Whether or not it would come in from a sales tax, that's just not the $64,000 question. It's much more. Dot, we all pay taxes, and we can't pick and choose when you prefer not to. The bailouts that pubs and restaurants got during COVID had to be paid for. I'd rather any spare money went to the NHS, thank you, not to the hospitality industry. Sue said, Manx Radio, the news item says it talks of small businesses being targeted by the tax increase. This has also happened to pensioners, some of the low-paid people on fixed incomes. The mistake is raising the tax percentage without raising the allowance threshold, therefore taking more money from some of the poorest people. As a pensioner on a very ordinary pension with no other income, I find myself pushed into the high tax bracket. Any rise in pension has been pointless because it's been taken back by the higher tax rate. And Steve's with us now. Hi, Steve.
Morning, Andy. How are you?
Good, thanks, yeah.
Just a quick sort of query, really. Mr. Morehouse's statements last week regarding internet, saying it's a basic human right, which I find, very difficult to understand. Yes, internet access should be available. However, as a human right, should we not have access to dentists, doctors, hospital appointments, operations, surgeries? I know which I would prefer.
Well, that's true. It depends where you class your human right, doesn't it? A lot of people seem joined at the hip to their device, Steve.
Well, they do, but I think, I'd rather be joined at the hospital if there's something wrong with me to basic human rights. It covers a multitude of sins. I think it's totally misleading, to be honest with you.
Okay, so your message to Mr. Morehouse is?
Well, change the words of what you're saying is, yes, internet access is ideal in the ideal world, but we're not in an ideal world at the moment, are we?
Okay.
We're looking at things with our government. I've got one question for them. Can you tell us, since the administration started some 4 years ago, is it now, what you've actually delivered on time, on budget, and for the benefit of people on the Isle of Man?
Okay. All right, Steve, appreciate that. Thanks for calling.
Cheers.
All right, it's 13 minutes past 12. Elizabeth is with us now. Hi, Elizabeth.
Good morning, or good afternoon, rather, sorry. Wrong time of day. Yeah, I would like to say, well, VAT, it is a lot. When you have building work done, I don't think you'd have to pay VAT on your building. I mean, the materials are bought, you pay VAT on that, and then when the builders do the work, they charge you VAT. I was charged VAT at 5 and 20%. So I don't know how that works out. I must have a work with that builder. But I didn't think you'd have to pay 5% and 20% VAT on your bill.
They're talking, the hospitality industry is asking for a lowering of the VAT rate. There are calls, some people are saying, get rid of VAT and put a sales tax on. So you'd have to pay something, even if it weren't called VAT.
Well, in America, don't they do sales tax? They don't charge you they don't charge VAT or something like that, or is it not? You do something in America, like my friend and I went to America in 2010 or something like that, and whatever she bought, she paid tax on when she bought it. But when she was going back, you go to a place and claim all that back. She claimed the tax that she won, what she bought. Anyway, also nuisance on the quay.
Oh, yes.
When Nuisance had the building itself and they were running it as a building, they never did any repair work in it. It was practically falling down around the rear when they were working in it. When they owned it, they should have been called to task to keep a building in good repair. If that had been kept in good repair, it wouldn't be in the state it is today.
I think, I don't want to speak for the people behind it, but I think they always wanted to knock it down and rebuild. I don't think, because the way that they talk about it not being built of brick, it was kind of mortar. It wasn't actually, so it's an historic building, certainly, but I don't think they could have done what they wanted to do with it without knocking the thing down. So I think they were always going to develop. That was the point. When they bought the site, they wanted to develop the site.
Well, my house is Manx stone, and it's lime scale that's in it. So they're going to knock down my house because it's got lime in it.
Well, they don't own it.
No, they don't. I don't. Yeah, I think people that have buildings and let them run into a bad state should be held to account. Because you should keep your building in a good state of repair, shouldn't you, really? Instead of turning it into an eyesore.
Well, as I say, they bought the site, and this is the whole point about brownfield sites and doing up brownfield site. They bought that. They bought the old bit of Nuisance, the old building on the end, and I think they own a couple of buildings further up. So they were going to do the whole block up and bring it into something that I think it was hospitality and apartments and offices and this, that and the other. So that's what they wanted to do. I don't think they made any secret of the fact that's what they wanted to do. So they were always going to get rid of it.
No, but they were refused permission to do that. There was a lovely big thing shown outside what they were going to do, but apparently the government refused to let them do it. They didn't give them building permission. Is that right?
Well, no, the planning committee didn't give them. Everybody else thought it was a good idea. The Department for Enterprise supported it. Douglas Council supported it. Everybody, it seems, wanted it, apart from the planning committee, and they took advice from, I think, heritage people and what have you as to what it should be. It was a very old building, and it was an old warehouse, and when it used to be a quay, and when cargo ships used to pull up there, but those days are long gone. Now, whether or not we cling on to that and do something with it, guaranteed it's going to cost a fortune, and you have to decide really what it is you want.
The people were prepared to spend a fortune on it, and yet the planning committee refused them planning permission. Had to give them planning permission. It could have been a nice building now. They were going to do flat shops and restaurants and all sorts.
You would have thought, and they apparently had anywhere up to £8 million ready to spend on it. Now they're not, and that's that, and nobody quite knows what's going to happen. They've offered the heritage bit of the building that they couldn't get planning on, they've offered to give it back to the government, just to say, well, you do, if you want to do something with it, you do something.
Which is going to cost the government, which is going to cost the taxpayer. But like I said, the planning committee need to give a good reason why they refuse the people,
Well, we'll see. All right, Elizabeth, good to hear from you.
Take care, no worries.
Thanks
Bye.
for that. I'm just looking at the last Pink Book. I can't find one in the past couple of years, but going back to the years 2019, 2020, the budgeted income receipts from customs and excise was about £370 million. So we got £370 million from VAT then. Basically, 40% of the Isle of Man's total income comprises indirect tax receipts. So getting rid of VAT puts 370 odd, probably closer to £400 million at risk. Now, whether or not we get that back from a sales tax, can you imagine? I suspect all the blood's gone from Dr. Allinson's face thinking about that. So getting rid of VAT, really, well, you'd be a very brave person to do that. So what do you think is in line for the hospitality industry? They say times are tough. Well, times are tough for everybody at the moment, aren't they? So this call to arms, well, let's hear what a couple of people have to say. Andy Saunders is from the LVA, and this is what Andy Saunders has to say about this situation, this call to arms meeting and the future for hospitality on the Isle of Man.
There are other ways they could work on VAT as well, but while that is a huge point for our businesses, and 20% of all of our turnover basically goes straight to government on that, there are other issues that could be addressed as well. We've got issues with not allowing people to flourish. In particular, national insurance is one of my problems, and staffing issues arise from that as well, as people are taking on more hours because of the cost of taxation, and national insurance is a major issue. It seems quite ridiculous to me that a minimum wage earner doing a standard week of work ends up in our highest tax bracket, which currently stands at 22%. The financial issues of government aren't really about businesses that are generating income, are they? The bloat in our government and the mismanagement of our public monies, that's where the real issues come. These other things could be addressed if the government got their side right.
The reality is, though, that government needs to make money, and it does this, as you mentioned, we've got the VAT, national insurance. If you cut those, what guarantee is there that we're going to be able to afford the essentials that we do need to live here on the Isle of Man?
Well, the drive to a better economy will produce more money as well.
How?
Because if we can build up our tourism trades and so on again, get it to hospitality, the money will come in other sectors. The government have squandered an awful lot of our money already. We are at a stage where the economy is crumbling around us. We need support for Manx businesses. And how that comes, we've issued many, many different ways of how the government can help. They don't appear to want to help in many situations.
And I suppose, again, people might say, there is just a reality of the situations that many people people have had to face over the past few years. You know, some of this, it's not all government's fault, surely.
The vast majority of this is government's fault. There's nothing in these policies that are really unique or new and haven't been discussed before with government. And the answers keep coming back, no. We've now had this situation where we've had a minister go out, because we called a meeting, go out and go straight on the offensive against us. It's not a great place where we are at with our government, unfortunately. We really want to see help so that all small Manx businesses and people and lower wage earners and so on are starting to see some of the benefits of what has been a very successful economy over all of these years, but doesn't seem to be helping our small businesses and our people, who are really the backbone of everything that happens on the Isle of Man.
Okay, Andy, so if you were to be able to wave a magic wand right now and put it all right as far as you see it, what would be the first steps you'd take?
The first step, a braver approach to how we deal and generate income on this island.
Andy Saunders from the LVA. Have you got any thoughts on what he had to say about minimum wage staff doing a normal week going into 22% tax bracket? Problems with NI, ITAP, the costs really, and what anyone can earn going into hospitality. I mentioned before, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Lots of people love dealing with the public on a day-to-day basis. Some people can't stand it. Can't dealing with the public, because you get terrific customers and you can get some out-and-out savages. I'm sure you've been in a pub or in a restaurant or in a cafe and somebody just is intent on arguing, you know, this isn't hot enough, that's too cold, this is stale, I don't like that, why are you charging that? And the staff in hospitality have to smile and be nice and take it all. It's not for everybody. So, just a couple of notes. There are quite a few prominent places that aren't open at the moment. Go to the Manx Museum, the Lemon Tree Restaurant as it was. It's not there. Now, the Manx Museum is one of our go-to places. All the people that are coming on that Hurtigruten vessel today, if they go to the Manx Museum, if you're listening now and you're from that vessel, take it from me. Take a sandwich, because you can't buy anything there. There's nobody there. One of the iconic stops on the electric railway to Ramsey at Doon Glen. Nobody's taking that little snack bar because they can't do that. Milntown at Ramsey struggles to get staff. So getting people, we haven't heard from the brewery. It would be nice if we heard from Heron and Braley. They're one of the biggest employers in hospitality on the Isle of Man. But hopefully we'll see what the brewery has to say regarding VAT and the hospitality industry. They should tone down the rhetoric, says 505. They shouldn't hold a gun to our heads, shouldn't the hospitality? It's been mentioned before about no horse trams for the cruise passengers. I've noted today that some of the cruise passengers booked trike tours. Perhaps it's a bucket list item, a lap of the TT course, but not today. Why? Because the mountain road is closed between Ramsey and the bungalow, and today and tomorrow for maintenance work ahead of the TT races. DOI is carrying out surface repairs, line painting, putting signage in and more. Meanwhile, contractors hired by the TT organisers are going to be installing race equipment, safety barriers and signalling kit. Access to the area of the bungalow, the tram station, Victory Cafe, Snaefell Summit Cafe, maintained from Faulty Will throughout. So at least the Snaefell Summit Cafe and the Victory Cafe are going to be open. The road should be open by 10 p.m. tomorrow. How would you sort this out? If you've been in hospitality, if you've been in the trades, can you see a way through this?
Grill, bake, steam, boil, stir fry, simmer, fry, roast, slow cook, griddle, toast. An Aga can do it all. An Aga isn't just an amazing cooker, it's a way of life. Aga specialist Haldane Fisher can recommend an Aga for every home. Call in store and discover the range and join thousands of owners who love coming home to Aga's warmth, style and practicality. Haldane Fisher for Aga. home to great cooking.
New builds, renovations, home improvements, commercial and civil engineering projects. Come to the local, long-established building company you can trust. Darrell Blake Construction. Well respected, with over 20 years' experience. Darrell Blake Construction can handle any project, from planning to completion, with a professional yet approachable way of working. For your free estimate, call 435 409 or visit on Facebook to view a wide range of work. Darrell Blake Construction. Committed to quality.
Road racing is back on the island, and Manx Radio 1368 will be an essential part of it, bringing live practice and race commentary, news, travel and more to the island and the world on AM, online and digital. With airtime, sponsorship and digital advertising options available now, it's your chance to reach a global motorsports audience. So contact our sales team on 682 620 or on sales@manxradio.com. Manx Radio 1368, the best biking station in the world.
In Tynwald last week, Onken MHK Rob Collister asked his colleagues to reaffirm a 2017 decision relating to the role LegCo members should fulfil, and in particular that they should not be a member of more than one government department. The government website tells us that one MLC is a member of two departments, and since last month's reshuffle there may be two. But does any of this really matter? There are mixed views in Tynwald, and we hear some of them on Agenda this evening at 6 p.m. on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. Should MLCs make decisions on government policy bearing in mind their at best tenuous mandate from the people?
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Thanks for dropping by today. Lots to get through today. The hospitality industry again can't hold a gun to our heads. I've just been for a dinner at a chip shop in St Paul's in Ramsey. All absolutely fantastic chip shop. Good portion of chips and fish. $5.50. Other chip shops need to follow suit, says Big John in Laxey. It does get quite expensive eating fish and chips, but $5.50. Maybe that's a lunchtime deal. I want to give you my experience, says Dave. I'm in full-time employment, which I pay Class 1 NI and tax. I've started a very small business, which I do in my spare time. I now pay Class 2 and Class 4 national insurance, an extra 22% tax. I'm now starting to wonder if it's viable. A lot of people want a second-time job, part-time employment, such as hospitality. Lots of people have a job working in the pub a couple of nights a week, or perhaps in a cafe at the weekend. But the extra burden of tax and NI puts a lot of people off. I think the government is shooting itself in. So let's get to the lines, and let's see. It's David. Hi, David.
Good morning. Good afternoon, sorry.
Hello.
We hear about this business to do with the VAT and how the government can't change it, etc. But, in fact, over 20 years ago, the government altered VAT to do with the building trade. Whereas if you supplied and fitted goods, such as guttering or windows or specific items, VAT was charged at 5%, not 20%.
Right.
And it still applies even now. So in actual fact, they can alter the terms and conditions of VAT.
Now, was that presumably was an initiative to stimulate that particular section of the economy?
I think it was, because I remember, because I was in work related to the building trade, and we used to explain to people that if we just supply you, we have to charge you the full. In fact, in those days it was 15%.
Right.
But if we fit it for you, then we only charge you 5% overall. And the same still applies. So in other words, if you get new windows fitted, if you get them fitted by the people who supply them, you only get a 5% charge, not 20%.
Right. Okay.
So they can change it.
So, leading on from that, would you think this is, is it something the government should look at?
Well, I think they should. I've been in the hospitality trade myself, and in those days when I was in it, I have to admit, there wasn't VAT. Certainly not on hotels and restaurants and things like that. You went in, you paid your price. If you had a good meal, you'd leave a tip, and that was it. I understand that now, of course, with VAT, that If it's in-house service, then you get charged VAT. If it's takeaway, apparently there's not supposed to be any VAT.
So really, I mean, a lot of anyone who's in business that charges VAT will bemoan the fact that they're basically unpaid tax collectors for the government.
Exactly. And where does the tax go?
Well, to the bottom line.
Well, not very often it goes to the bottom line. It tends to go to the top line, doesn't it? A lot of it, with higher wages and salaries and things. And unfortunately, the people on the bottom line don't always benefit from it.
But we're in this situation now when we're, as I mentioned, it's basically upwards of £400 million that we get from indirect tax in the system, and the government. I mean, times are tough. I mean, you can dress it up whatever way you want it. When people go and see the members of Comin this week, not one member of Comin is going to say we've got lots of money. Everybody's going to be pleading poverty, Dave.
Oh yeah, well they will do, because I mean, unfortunately, the way things are at the moment, in particular with transportation costs and fuel, the only ones that are making money at the moment, of course, are the fuel companies with gas and petrol and diesel. And, electric, they're making plenty of money, unfortunately, at our expense, but they're not really putting it back into the system.
Now, as you mentioned, the building trade and the construction industry was given something of a break a while ago. Do you think the hospitality industry is as fundamental as the construction industry to the Isle of Man?
Yes, I do, actually, because, I mean, that particular industry, everybody goes on about, the hospitality industry and tourism on the Isle of Man. Well, if the tourists come over here and they can't get what they want, they won't go back. And, to have the variety of eating places and things like that, it is essential, really.
You'll know, having been in the hospitality industry, that everything is about front of house, David. Everything is about the image, the ethos, the emotion that you put over as somebody who's in hospitality. You have to look cheery and happy. And if you're not, what happens then?
Well, that's the thing with them. Unfortunately, you will always get some staff who are, I wouldn't say non-cooperative, but basically, as far as they're concerned, it's just a job. Whereas in actual fact, with most people in the hospitality industry, it's more of a vocation. I mean, if you run a pub or something, it's not a 9 till 5 job. You're on from 8 o'clock in the morning through till midnight. And, there are times when there is no money coming in at all during the day. But when the people come in, I mean, I always used to say to our staff that, you're not just here to serve drinks, you're here to sell them. And in other words, you get chatting to people if you've got time. You find out where they're from or whatever, and see if you can get different groups to connect. Yeah. And that's one of the things we always thought was essential.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, David. Thanks for calling today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Good to hear from you. 26 minutes before 1. Just want to tell you, lots of people saying second jobs in pubs and what have you are well, they've had them, but obviously now with tax going up and falling into different tax brackets, sometimes it's just not worth it. Well, Charles, saying, if the hospitality industry is struggling, why are people still desperate to open yet more cafes, restaurants and coffee shops? I work in Athol Street, and when 2 long-established businesses closed recently, almost straight away 2 coffee shops had opened. There was already an established coffee shop in the area. Do we really need so many coffee shops and restaurants? Says Andy. If there's no hospitality sector, the whingers will be the first to complain you can't get a meal, a drink or coffee. The same thing happened to the waterfall in Glen May. They just let it fall apart so they can knock it down and build houses. The commissioners have done nothing for the people in Glen May over this subject, and they've just let people down. The commissioners absolutely don't do anything. A waste of time having commissioners there. There's no shop. There's no hub in Glen May. It's shocking for a beautiful village like Glen May with beautiful views, walks to the beach, so much to offer. The commissioners, I think, should be ashamed of themselves, none of whom actually live in the village, says Paul. Glen May used to have a lot, didn't it? The shop, the post office, the pub. But there comes a time, when, if you've been in the hospitality industry, and as David said, when nobody's there and those cold winter nights go by, when you're still paying for heating, lighting, rates, supplies and staff, and nothing is coming in, it can be a dispiriting time. Quite what you do about it, but as that correspondent said, people are still wanting to open restaurants and coffee bars. I've got a message for you, says Lexi, who said, thank you, Lexi. A message about the horse trams. They aren't running today because it's a Monday. We have a cruise ship in harbour, and those famous Manx horse trams, not even home of the halfway horse tram. The no-way horse tram today. Can we find out who makes the planning committee and their qualifications, says David? Well, I'll tell you. Well, if the government website is up to date, current members of the planning committee, Mr. Callister, Rob Callister, MHK, is chairman. Then Mr. Young, Mr. Skelton, Mr. Warren, Mrs. Hughes, Miss Betteridge, and Mr. Whiteway are the members of the planning committee. And actually, even before it's 22 minutes now before 1, I think before 1 today we may be getting the answer on that big development, the Tavere development on the old Villiers site in Douglas. I think they're about to, that's been recommended to go through, but the planning committee are currently sitting, and hopefully we'll find out early lunchtime today whether or not that is going to happen. Just to change the subject, has anybody noticed how aggressive Douglas Council has been in pruning and managing the trees that they're responsible for? I've seen a number of trees where the branches and boughs have been stripped right back to the trunk. Some of these trees had nesting birds in them. I think it's a bit of an overkill, like a sledgehammer cracking a walnut. Bonzo's on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello. Yes, talking about things of hospitality and the economy in general.
Yeah.
I remember during the budget phoning in, and I've calculated, I can't remember the exact figure, but the amount of personal allowance, the Manx personal allowance, would have to go up to be equivalent to the difference between the Manx personal allowance and the UK personal allowance that I found when I returned to the island in 2001, which gave then, that's a nice economic advantage. That would have to be, I seem to remember the figure is 19,800.
Wow.
So the basic personal allowance would have to be 19,800, plus you would have to make allowances for the additional cost of living. So if we want to talk about a living wage, then you are talking in the region of 24,000 a year, 13, 14 pounds an hour. And that really should not be taxed at all directly. But that's the kind of advantage that there was for people on the lower half of earnings, or indeed then into the bottom half of the top half, as it were.
But surely government knew when they were working out these this tax strategy that was going to happen.
Yes, but this was the fair state model, and it doesn't work. We've seen how it doesn't work for years and years and years. Services have deteriorated, infrastructure has run down, but always for the certainly the top quarter of earnings, and in particular, I would say the top 10% of incomes. Still continuing to never have it so good. And Alan Bell did admit in many speeches that there was a two-speed economy, and we do have a two-speed economy, and the lower speed one is just grinding to a halt.
Talking of Alan Bell, he was the one who wanted our cafe society. He wanted the service sector. He wanted the cafes and restaurant to be emblematic of the Isle of Man. And the trouble is, when you talk about hospitality, it can sometimes just seem a bit commonplace and mundane. You know, a cup of coffee here, a sandwich there. But that really counts when you're in the service industry. You know, a few sandwiches, maybe a few sandwiches to one person, but it's a living to another person.
Well, not only that, it's the internal economy. You know, that's money that goes round and round in the Isle of Man.
Good point.
It doesn't go off to
good point.
Various other places. So I think what we're going to have to do, government are going to find that unless they want to find people camped out on their doorsteps every day, I think they're going to have to find that they are going to have another economic event before the autumn, and they are going to have to do some fairly radical things, and they're going to have to address the sacred cow of taxing the rich a bit more.
So who is going to advocate on behalf of this, if you like, people like you and me, Bonzo, the lower orders? Who's going to advocate on behalf of this lower part of the economy?
Well, I think those MHKs who'd like to continue to have a seat after September 26th.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that, Bonzo. Thanks for calling.
Okay, then. Cheers. Bye.
And Derek's on now. Hi, Derek.
Oh, good morning. Good afternoon, Andy.
Hello.
Hiya. Just trying to get a gulp of tea.
Good for you.
I have a gripe for my wife here. We got a problem. On the 5th of April, she was informed by the Alaman Bank that her card had been compromised, and they'd cancelled her card. And they said, we'll send you another one. 5th of April. She hasn't got one yet. And we have tried and tried and tried to ring the numbers, and no one will answer the phone.
What numbers are you calling?
What numbers are you calling?
The Alaman Bank.
Alaman Bank in Douglas.
Yeah.
And the one in Jersey.
Well, yeah, and nobody's even picking up the phone.
No, they won't even pick the phone up, Andy. This is well, it's criminal. My wife has got no card. If I wasn't here, how the hell does she exist?
And this was two weeks ago. They got in touch with you, did they?
On the 5th of April, they cancelled it and told it that the card had been compromised. Okay. So, to protect it, they wiped it out. So what do? You ring up and ask for another. How do you get through when they won't lift the phone up?
Okay. Well, if anybody is listening who knows a phone number that the Alaman Bank will actually answer, then please give us a call.
Yeah, I'll be inundated.
Well, that's fine as long as you get that sorted.
Yeah, I know. It's desperate. You know, you just can't live without a card.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it there, Derek. Then, if anybody knows the number, just keep listening, and I'm sure we'll get a number that they'll pick up.
Good stir up would do no one any harm, would it?
Right. Thanks for calling.
Right. Cheers. Now,
Good
bye.
to hear from you. Thanks for that. So, what number? And here's a note in from better not tell anybody that beer prices are going up this week. I'm afraid while the pint is over £5 a pint, and a meal will set you back over £50 a head. Where? Wow, basic. Then people will just go out less. It's basic economics, says Steve. I think the £5% in the construction was to try to erase the black market. The contractor still has to pay 20% VAT to the builders merchants and claim it back on their VAT return. People asking for cash still have to pay 20% at the merchants, while the bona fide contractors only charge the 5% on labour and materials, says the WhatsApper. Too many people bring being paid from tax, NI and VAT receipts, while there's a shortage of labour in the private sector creating such revenue. It's a crazy situation. We need to reform the scale and scope of local and central government, and over time the imbalance will be redressed and we'll have more givers than takers. We need more thoughtful, long-term economic vision, says Dave. I think we call that a strategy. Thank you, David. I've just seen the Manx race walking star Neil Wade driving the double-decker horse tram, so that lady is incorrect. So is the double-decker horse tram. Thank you, Mike at the Welbeck. He knows of what he speaks. It's Monday, so you know what that means. Monday means we're looking back in the archive when Mannin Line finishes today. You're going to hear an interview with Alan Jackson. Alan Jackson, Manx Radio royalty. If you don't know, Jacko was the person who started Mannin Line back in the 1970s. I know, this has been going on for nearly 50 years. I know, don't ask how. Anyway, Jacko, Alan Jackson, will be talking to Ken Dodd when Ken Dodd made one of his many visits to the Isle of Man in the 1970s. After Mannin Line today, Alan Jackson and Ken Dodd.
Ever thought your storage could be more smart, more spacious, more stylish? Discover chic and clever bedroom storage solutions at Lifestyle Furniture. Crafted with care and precision, our range of sliding door and hinged wardrobes is available in a wide choice of sizes and beautiful finishes, all with 0% finance, and we'll deliver and build them for you absolutely free. Find a smarter wardrobe at Lifestyle Furniture, Snugborough Trading Estate and Union Mills. Finance available subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. See in store for details.
ShopRite Savers, available now from our stores in Peel, Ramsey and Onchan. Stock up on laundry. Comfort Ultimate Care 58 wash for $2.50. Persil Laundry Liquid 53 wash just £4.72. A time-saving snack. 90-gram pot noodle only 70 pence. Coffee break. Kenco Millicano 100 gram just £4. Pasta sauce. Jars of 500 gram Dolmio Bolognese only $1.50. All these savers and more available at ShopRite.
Mike has got the Conister feeling. Because despite his busy life, getting the finance to sort some home improvements was quicker and easier than he ever dreamt with Conister Bank.
You got me feeling good, got me feeling good, got me feeling good, got me feeling good, yeah!
Ooh, and not even Conister can help improve his singing. Apply online today at conisterbank.co.in and you'll get the Conister feeling too. All loans are subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Early settlement fees apply.
Manx Radio Breakfast.
And we're here every weekday with the morning's main stories.
When you do get ferry cancellations because of poor weather, that does cause some real challenges.
It's lovely to see everybody at the finish, and we popped a bottle of champagne to celebrate, and the sun is shining in Ramsey.
The latest weather and travel news.
And given the amount of rainfall that we've had, certainly for the first part of April, it's likely to have caused fairly significant flooding in most locations.
Our daily quiz.
Sound bites. And plenty of other topics.
Is that a roar or is it a growl?
Manx Radio Breakfast.
Back tomorrow from 7:30.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Fast to my 12 minutes before 1. Howard's on now. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Andy. Just a curious when you're talking there about various bits and pieces with government treasury. You hear very little about that rather large £400 million loan that the government took out. We've not heard where it's been used, what it's been used for, where it's gone, and what's happening to it. Obviously, they're going to still be paying the interest on it, so that's coming out of government coffers, the taxpayers, and they've already said that they're going to guarantee cover up to $100 million for the Manx Development Corporation. Well, we can see now, after only 2 years, that the nurses' home complex is already £2 million over budget. So they saying going cap in hand to the taxpayers again now and saying, we want a bit more, we want a bit more. And gradually this will eat into that 400 million and more. Also, they've promised 40 million, and we've not heard anything where it's gone, who's had it and why, for the green scene, the environmental.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money disappearing out of the coffers.
I'm trying to think. That was what, 3 years? It was 2021, I think. That £400 million, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was Dr. Allison's first swipe at the Treasury. They went in, the Treasury went in, and £400 million, just like that. But who did they borrow it off? I don't know. It may have already come out into the public. Yeah. But who did they borrow it off?
Well,
what was the interest rate?
Well, that was the point at the time, because it was 2021 and it was very, very low interest rate. They basically said low interest rates meant it was very cheap to borrow that £400 million. I mean, obviously there'll be an amount, but it was presumably if it's a fixed interest rate, they're still paying that basic interest rate then.
But they had the reserves and everything, and the money was there sitting in the reserves. Now, if you've got money in the bank, you just don't go and borrow more just because the interest rates are low.
I think at the time they said that our reserves weren't, what they call it, liquid. They couldn't access it. Sometimes if you access, you have to ask for 3 months to get into a bank account. I think they basically said at the time it would cost them more to access the reserves than it would to borrow at a very low interest rate.
Yeah, but there's no explanation in layman's terms. They come out with all this gobbledygook, and there's never, ever anybody comes on from the civil service, Treasury, etc. You'll get a pre-written script for Dr. Allison, or as it was then, Alf Cannon, and there's no real explanations as to where money is going. And I'm not saying there's any thieving going on, anything like that, like the SNP debacle at the moment, but the public want to know where the money is going and who is receiving the money. And the likes of, saying you're talking about the hospitality, I brought this up 3-4 years ago about the brewery and the hospitality people were wanting to reduce the size of the spirit measures, and eventually they wore the Office of Fair Trading down, and you now get less for your money. But they never put the prices, so that was a nice little earner. So they're getting more per bottle now, and they forget about all these things. So, the hospitality have done very, very well, and now it's the lean times, and they're going to have to either pull the horns in or go under.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that, Howard.
Bye now.
Good to hear from you. It's 7 minutes before 1. That £400 million was summertime 2021. Do you remember that? 400 million. Treasury Minister asked Tynwald to borrow 400 million. It was used, I think, about £260 million was the internal debts owed to government by the steam packet and Manx Utilities. 80 million was to be paid to the ferry company for Manxman, which that came in on budget, on time. Bless the South Koreans. But lots of other things. The £250 million impact of COVID-19 was a factor behind the financial motion as well. Well, there is a way you can find out, and that is tonight, and that is to be at Castle Rushen High School, because the first of 4 Listening to You sessions will be on this week. Tonight at Castle Rushen High School, doors open 5:30, and from 6 till 8 o'clock, the Chief Minister is going to be there with departmental ministers speaking directly to you about matters that are important to you. There will also be a 45-minute panel Q&A session, but basically, if you want to speak face-to-face to a minister, you can do it this week in the South, tonight at Castle Rushen High School, in the West tomorrow at QE2 High School, they'd like to see you there, on Wednesday in Douglas at Ballacameen High School, and on Thursday in the North at Ramsey Grammar School. Well, if you want to talk to them, and perhaps what's happened to the £400 million, Manx Radio's Christian Jones will be at every one with a Manx Radio microphone, so if you want to speak to Christian, you can as well. But he won't be on the panel. So, doors open 5:30. The sessions are 6 till 8 o'clock, Castle Rushen High School tonight. QE2 on Tuesday, Ballacameen on Wednesday, and Ramsey Grammar School on Thursday. Absolutely no way should government step in to give any form of financial support to hospitality sector. Rising costs aren't unique to them, says Margaret. There were enough handouts during COVID. These businesses come and go all the time. The good ones will weather the storm. Those poorly run and not patronised will, I'm afraid, fail. It's a fact of retail life. Thanks to Quirky on the phone.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
Many will still recall watching the remarkable Ken Dodd in action at the Gaiety Theatre. No one gets out till after midnight. We have guards posted, he used to joke, but he wasn't joking. You really got value for money when Doddy was on stage. Here he is, talking to Manx Radio's Alan Jackson.
Well, I'm stage struck. That's when I go home at night and open the refrigerator and the light comes on, I take a bow. I do, I love show business.
Perhaps you can tell me how you remember your material, because you're a fast-working comic, aren't you?
Well, I would say that I'm not, if you'll pardon me for saying, I'm not just a comic. I started off as a music hall comedian, just doing stand-up comedy. Then I graduated and added a little bit of singing into the act, and so I became a vocalist, a pop singer. And then I started sort of with the Diddy Men. I became an Uncle Ken, a family comedian. And then I've been into Shakespeare. I've played Malvolio in Twelfth Night at the Liverpool Playhouse. And this year I'm going to be an impresario. So, I'm going to be a sort of a Lou and Leslie Gray, Bernard Delfont rolled into one.
Well, we'll talk about that a little later on, Ken. Perhaps I can congratulate you, first of all, at getting in the Guinness Book of Records.
The marathon, yes. Well, that was at the Royal Court, Liverpool, which we will be talking about later on, because that's when I'm going to be an impresario. And this was, we did 3 hours, well, it was about 3.5 hours, but by the time we'd sort of introduced ourselves and things like that, it was about, and the Lord Mayor had been on and one or two other little things, 3 hours, 15 minutes.
Looking at the material that you use, you obviously have, not set jokes, but you obviously have jokes, but you also get your laughs from putting people's imagination to work.
Yeah, I think you've got to have that. That's rapport, communication with your audience. This is very important. I never do a show at an audience, I always do a show with an audience.
Was this always the case? When in the early days?
Yes, I think so. I started off. The Italians have a word for certain entertainers go in for a certain kind of performance, which involves a thing called simpatico, and Italians have this word. Simpatico means that you're able to. You tune in to your audience, and you do what you try to please them. You do what they would want you to do.
And life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.